You are listening to Doug Thorpe's New Manager Forum. Sit back and enjoy this new message. Here's Doug.
Hi, everybody. This is Doug Thorpe. Today I'm visiting with a longtime friend and colleague, Bill Weber. Bill is a retired brigadier general from the U.S. Army, and today we're going to talk about everything leadership. Bill, thanks for joining us. How you doing?
Good, Doug. Thank you for having me. Appreciate the opportunity.
You betcha. You betcha. So, Bill, you made a long-time career of the military, and on behalf of all our listeners, I do want to say thank you for your service. What led you to go military?
My father was a soldier, of course. He was a lieutenant colonel in the Army, and, you inspired me as well as we were students at A&M. And then eventually what I thought it figured out was for some reason people kept following me. I wasn't sure why. And then it dawned on me that maybe I had some leadership skills. And then, I was fortunate to develop those somewhat in the Corps Cadets there at A&M. And then once I joined the Army or was commissioned in the Army, the opportunities to lead soldiers just, of course, was part of the job description. And I figured out that I was pretty good at that. So over time, I got better and better. And the Army kept meeting my own personal goals and professional goals, and I felt like I was contributing. So I saw no need to leave. And the opportunities to lead soldiers was just a lot of fun. So that's why I stayed 32 years.
Well, speaking of the days at A&M, you were a business management major, and as I recall, some of the things they tried to teach us there made a lot of sense, but then when we got out and the real world hit, there was a whole new education that happened. How was your experience with that?
No, that's right. I mean, you start off with a certain level of theory and then a certain level of experience up to that point at 21 or 22 years old. That may or may not be good experiences, but the theory of leadership and or management to some extent, managing organizations, leading people, I think you only get better at that through experience and watching what others are doing or failing to do. And then some of it is just leadership by discovery. And then eventually you settle on a leadership style that appeals to people to get done what they need to do. So I think, over time, it wasn't any better or worse than anything else, I guess, but it gave us a foundation to start from that was pretty good. And then the opportunities we had, all of us, most of us, some of us in the Corps Cadets, I think was really useful, just the leadership cauldron environment that we operated in, and really set some good baselines for us.
So when you got commissioned and went on active duty, there is a very natural, I call it the power of the position, and the military is probably more obvious than even corporate America may be. Young people going into the business world, they may be called the unit manager, the unit leader, team leader, whatever. But the power of the position is a little bit more vague. But in the military, it's pretty specific. Your platoon leader, your company commander, et cetera, et cetera. So how did you embrace that early recognition of the power of the position?
Well, you're right. I mean, it's pretty defined for any rank or position that you're going in. There are very few surprises. I mean, the organization's been around a long time. So I was comfortable in that. I mean, it's a structured environment where there are expectations from everybody that depending on your position and your rank, of course. And frankly, I found it pretty helpful. I mean, you're the platoon leader to start with your initial position, and there are certain expectations for what the platoon leader should be doing. You're called a leader for a reason. You're the only position in a platoon that's called a leader. The rest of them were implied. In this case, you're designated, and by virtue of your rank and your position, that's what you do. So it's pretty easy. I mean, it takes a while to transition in a new organization with new people and trying to figure out the motivations, get people to do what you need them to do. So, but over time, you get used to your position, and what you're supposed to be doing. And but in the Army, of course, it's a little different. Once you get used to what you're doing, we move you on to the next position. So,
Right.
yeah, that's how we develop people, I guess.
Sometimes not too different from corporate America and the way things happen.
Yeah.
How quickly were you able to transition from relying just solely on the power of the position and move into, well, I'll call it bona fide leadership, where you're exerting some of your own style and your own initiative and character?
Yeah, I think not only for platoon leader, but I think for virtually every position, it takes about 6 months till you get real comfortable with what your responsibilities are and with the people you're working with. You know, over time, it takes less time. I think, you know, the more senior you get, you're more familiar. You're not as concerned about the organization because you understand it a little better than you normally would. But as a new lieutenant, it takes about 6 months. And that's what I tell everybody that I work with leader development on is any new position takes 4 to 6 months, depending on your skill sets, and then depending as well on the complexity of the operation and the experience of the people working for you. I mean, you know, as an example, if you're going into a SEAL team as a lieutenant commander in a SEAL team, well, you've been around a SEAL team before. So you have full trust and confidence in what those guys are doing already. And you don't have to worry about it and check their homework, you know. So it's just a function now of you fitting in on your particular leadership style. But for organizations less complex, of course, and with less experience involved, I think any leader, unless you've been around the business or the profession for a while, if you're going into a new position, typically it's the first time you've been in that position. So it takes some time to transition, trying to figure out what it is. And then from my point of view, it was always, if you could get a third of your available time worrying about trying to figure out the organization, then you have 2/3 of your time to be effective and efficient in the organization. That's what I was always shooting for. So it's a rough rule of thumb, 4 to 6 months. If you're going beyond 6 months, you've either got a very complex organization or you need some help.
Yeah. Turning the tables a little bit, thinking about being a more senior executive with some junior executives just taking on those roles and doing the things you're talking about with the 6-month transition. Isn't there something to be said for maybe not wanting those junior guys to make too many changes and move too many deck chairs until they figure it all out?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, again, you're assuming that's a pretty constant organization that doesn't have any severe problems, but yeah. And the smart guys will. The smart guys will realize, look, just take some time, see what's working well, what's not working well. Don't come in and start making changes because it doesn't set well with the current administration in terms of the organization. Everybody's been there a while, and if you come in and criticize and start changing, they tend to take that personally that they haven't been doing a good job previous to that. So there's some of that going on. And then, you know, my other point is what makes you so damn experienced that you can change all this stuff around already. I mean, what have I missed? You know, did you go to some certain school, or is this unique conditions? Now there are situations. I mean, if you're moving laterally into the same types of organizations, you know, the learning curve's clearly in there. I mean, if you're commanding a company for the third time or a platoon for a second time, you know, a third time, you probably have it down pretty pat. You know what right looks like, so you waste even less time getting settled in.
Looking at things from the military backdrop, do you have a lot of latitude to exert personal leadership style?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, it's not as draconian as autocratic as some people think it is. Actually, it's over time, we've developed a doctrine that says, look, we want kind of centralized planning and then decentralized execution. So we can plan efficiently enough with the resources, and then we provide those, and then we expect subordinates to go out and just use their imagination to get the job done. So again, it's all personality dependent. Some micromanagers aren't comfortable with that, so they get too involved, I think, in some things. But as a general rule, yeah. I mean, people find it hard to believe, but there's a lot of room in the Army and other services for creative thinking and building an environment that people can flourish in, you know, because the command climate is there to allow people to make mistakes without being tortured and there's no zero defect implications. And that's how organizations grow, how people grow. You got some left and right limits in there, and as long as somebody doesn't really break something bad, make some mistakes, underwrite those mistakes and grow from them.
Mm-hmm. Great. I've seen some discussion that the military actually at some level is actually studying and embracing this notion of servant leadership. Am I correct on that, or is that?
Yeah. Well, we espouse it all the time anyway, but it hadn't made its way into our leader development doctrine yet, but it's talked about all the time. And it clearly makes sense. I mean, we're called service members, right? We're the armed services. Well, what's the root cause of those terms? It's service to our country. It's service to the Army. It's service. I mean, so intuitively it makes sense anyway. And sometimes, we lose sight of that fact maybe, but we always try to keep coming back to the point, look, we're here to serve the nation. That's what we do. And if you remember that, regardless of where they send you and what you're being asked to do, United Services Organization. So in that context, it's all about doing something for our country and the Army specifically.
Well, today we're talking to retired Brigadier General Bill Weber. We're going to take a short break, and I'll be back on the other side. Hi, guys. Doug Thorpe here. I want to tell you about my new book, The Uncommon Commodity. I call it the Common Sense Guide for New Managers. I wrote this thing with the intent of helping new first-time managers really make a difference right where they are. Most of the time you get thrown into that job, you're not used to being in management, and boy, is it different when you're not the doer anymore, but now you're the leader of the team. It's no longer about you, but it's about them. Hey, this book has been on the shelf since July. And I'm really happy. I feel blessed with the reception I'm getting in the marketplace. Reviews are coming in. It's been a real privilege to watch it grow and hear what people are saying. There's an interesting twist here I'm going to throw in, a little spoiler alert. A lot of seasoned managers are reading it and they're going, wow, I either forgot that, or I need to remember that, or I need to learn that. So it really hits a broader audience. I want to encourage you to take a look. Again, it's called The Uncommon Commodity, and it's available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Nook, and on iBooks. So take a read and leave me a comment if you will. I would appreciate it. Now, back to our show. We're back today with retired Brigadier General Bill Weber, U.S. Army. We've been talking about leadership in the context of the military, but in this second half, I would like to turn it around a little bit, Bill. If you had any advice you could give to a new first-time leader, no respect to where they're planted and what they've been tasked to do, what are the couple of things you would encourage them to get started on right away?
Well, leadership is about people. So you need to get out there and work on your people skills, if you will, learning to understand people, how to communicate with people. How their personal styles differ or are alike as your style, because you can't move people around if you don't understand what motivates and what drives them. In the commercial world, of course, it tends to be profit, paychecks, salaries, and that sort of stuff. And in the armed services, it's different. But it's all the same. It's about getting the most out of your people as their potential possesses. So as any leader, I mean, you're looking at motivating your people to get the job done. I mean, that's fundamentally true in every specialty or profession. So how do you do that? Well, you got to get out and you got to meet them, and you got to work with them. You got to understand them. And you got to sympathize, empathize, care for them. What we teach in the Army is that you cannot be a good leader if you don't care for people. That's on a personal level, care about what their personal concerns are, care about them professionally in terms of their development, care about their pay and their families. All those sorts of things are a little different. Some of them are unique to the military and the armed services, but not really. If you have an employee in the commercial world who has pay problems, you better care enough about that individual and get his pay figured out. It applies across the board, but caring, you got to learn how to care for people. And then the second piece of that is, in my view, is, what I tell people that I work with in leadership development courses in the Army is, look, your legacy is not defined by how well the unit does today or how well you do next year. What your legacy is defined as how well you develop your junior leaders to become senior leaders, and that working on the next generation of people to show them what right looks like, to establish some good leadership traits early on that take care of people. So that's kind of my approach to it is, leadership's about caring. Leadership is about people. Management is about things. Leadership's about people. That's how I kind of cleanly define it. It's more complex, of course, but fundamentally, that's how I look at things. And then your legacy is not going to be, building a $100 million company into a $300 million company. It might be commercially. I don't know. They'll put a statue of you up front and all, but your legacy really is how did you develop the leaders to take on the next, after you retire, the next generation? Not only your company, but making your community or your profession stronger. I mean, that's what people get remembered for, in my view. So that's kind of my approach, Doug.
Makes sense. So somewhere in the middle of all that, and I guess this goes back to business school, I remember one of the theories they talked to us about is that sort of 9-box grid that talks about man versus mission.
Yeah.
And making the right balance depending on the circumstance. And mission, of course, is a word that everybody thinks about with the military. So it's more so, but mission or purpose, goal, whatever, is also very viable commercially. So when we think about leadership, what do you teach young leaders about that balance of man versus mission?
Yeah, I don't think it's any different, frankly. I mean, because everybody has a purpose. I mean, every organization has a mission or a purpose. It's to do something, either to present or manufacture paper clips or solve the world's health problems, or, you can take it from one extreme to the other. And the military is no different. We have a purpose, which is to fight our nation's wars. So the kind of mantra I always worked with was mission first, people always. How do you separate those? I don't know that you can. You can't accomplish a mission if you don't have the right people and resources to get you there. Well, you can't take care of your people with, sometimes you have to take care of your people before you get the mission done well enough. I don't know. It's a very fine line, but fundamentally, you cannot fail in accomplishing your purpose and mission, because there are times that you do. People get killed, things don't go well enough. You fail to meet your revenue expectations, your profit expectations, whatever it is. We do fail. Everybody does. Every organization does. I mean, so, maybe you got to go back and peel the onion back and say, what happened? Did we set the bar too high? Did we not have adequate resources, adequate people developed, leaders in the right places? All those sorts of things come to mind. But fundamentally, if you have the right organization that's structured with the right people to lead and to follow against a mission that they're capable of achieving, there should never be mission failure. There'll be some adjustments along the way, no doubt, but it all starts with people. I mean, sure, you have a purpose, you have a mission, you have something you got to do. Well, then you build the organization to get you there. You fill the organization with the right people, with the right resources, with the right training. Mm-hmm. And that's, like any organization, that's what gets you there.
Developing the right leaders to be the next generation and create that legacy. There is a raging debate among some academicians and others, the question being, is leadership born or bred? For the sake of putting you on the spot here, do you have an opinion on that question?
Yeah, I mean, we always think about that as well. I would say both. There's some individuals that do have some natural leader skills that are obvious at a very young age. You can think of, Patton was one, MacArthur is one. Now, certainly they're born into situations and families where there are certain expectations for their offspring, so those expectations get started early in kids. But I think there are natural leaders. You think of Churchill. I mean, but my other point is that they're very far and few between. And when you'd say natural leaders, okay, they may be, but they still have to go through a development period where they really get to hone their leadership skills. I mean, you don't learn to be a prime minister of England without kind of going through some experiences, positive and negative. So yes, there are, in my view, there are people born with the right leadership skills to do a good job. The rest of us, I think, are born with some of those skills. There are some that are born with none of those skills. So the none of those skills folks don't go very far if you're trying to develop them for leaders. They don't become leaders, and they, for the most part, don't want to. But for the rest of us, we have some fundamental leadership skills or traits that we're born with. We may not realize it, and then as a function of experience and education and training, those skills are developed, and then they're honed, and then they're prosecuted in that sense, and then you become a leader. I mean, not all of us joining the Army are destined to become general officers. None of us want to be. None of us should be. Some of us should be, but the traits that get you to become a general officer are developed over time with a lot of leader development periods in your life, to include formal education, experience, and informal situations working with people.
Good words. So we're coming kind of to the home stretch here, Bill. Let's take it home with just a basic summation here. If you were talking to a small room full of aspiring business leaders that were just put in that position for the first time, what are a couple of the thoughts you'd leave with them?
Yeah, and I'm assuming a profit-oriented organization here.
Yeah.
Really, I mean, my advice would be to them, look, all of you have certain metrics that you're measured against in order to be profitable as a company and in order to be successful, okay? Those metrics sometimes are easier in the commercial world than armed services. We have our own metrics, but in the commercial world, it's pretty clear to you what you need to do to be successful. You cannot be successful if you're leading people without their support, okay?
Right.
You have to get their support by demonstrating that you know what you're doing. And you may not, so it's always fair to ask. Okay? Ask your peers, ask your superiors, ask your subordinates, what are you doing wrong? There's nothing wrong with that. But you have to get buy-in from your subordinates in this case to do what you need them to do. And my fundamental definition of leadership is, look, it's all about getting people to do what you need them to do. I think Eisenhower said that somewhere along the line, but that's it. So if you can't get people motivated to do what you need them to do, then one, you're not doing something right as a leader, or two, they're not capable of following. So one of you has to change. So, but the bottom line is you have a mission to achieve, whatever that's described to be, and you have metrics that are laid out to do that. So it's not hard to get people to follow you. If you just demonstrate some sincerity in terms of their personal life, in terms of the quality of their work, most of us respond pretty well to positive reinforcement. Most of us respond very poorly to negative reinforcement. So if something goes wrong and you rant and rave and scream at people, well, you get the kind of same response that you would expect, people not buying in. If you build an organization and lead a group of people that allows for mistakes, honest mistakes that aren't catastrophic, in some cases they could be, but if you can establish the parameters for people to work in, give them some freedom, let them feel comfortable that they're part of the team, then you'll do well. And everybody learn as the experience continues.
Good deal. Good deal. Well, Bill, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to have had you on the segment here. Again, folks, this is Brigadier General Bill Weber, retired from the U.S. Army, longtime friend and colleague of mine. You can pick this video up again if you want to see it for later replay on dougthorpe.com. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.
Thank you, Doug.
All right, Bill. Thank you.
You have been listening to Doug Thorpe's New Manager Forum. Visit our website at dougthorpe.com. Leave a comment or ask a question. We'll see you in the next episode.